Great greetings, everyone. For sure, we have more noteworthy clarity now. To the extent that the hypothesis seen after the political race. And I expected to, talk a pinch about, a vibe that this has occurred before for me. I started my calling, genuinely during the 80s, and, by then we had the Reagan Association, and a lot of discussion about everything, a ton of which we're hearing today, comparable kinds of conversation. Consequently, I expected to take you a pinch through the macros. What the Trump Association says it needs, versus what could most likely happen, given, that setting, as well as what this clarity will mean for the universe of advancement, the universe of notable headway. Moreover, we acknowledge the world is evolving in, heavenly ways. Subsequently, we want to take you through a part of that, and how this association and its systems are probably going to accelerate these changes. In this manner, we ought to examine macros first. In the start of the Reagan Association, there were sequential slumps and credit charges hit 15%. And that was a really difficult environment for cash the board. In light of everything, President Trump is coming into office when, that piece of a similar in the Reagan Association has been done. And I review the zeros after that. The 80s and 90s were the splendid time of dynamic worth viable cash the executives, and I accept we're bringing their back. In particular, with respect to the discussion, a lack back then. After successive slumps, 5.5%, the security market was fixed about that. Monetary supporters were as well. What they didn't grasp is that the Reagan courses of action, of expense decreases close by lower advance expenses, achieved by Volcker moving from two-fold-digit funding costs to something much lower, that those would have been incredibly sure for money-related improvement, and that we wanted to foster right out of the lack. That advancement out of the lack started during the 80s with the Reagan Association and finished during the 90s with the Clinton Association, bringing us into an overabundance. We accept we will experience for the most part something comparable this time around. The expense decreases we acknowledge are generally huge, especially if Trump completely finishes, his duty, ensure. By and by, I disdain obligations myself, but instead expecting we will facilitate obligations, not on our liberation accessories, yet rather on those countries that genuinely are not giving American work and items a level milestone, We counter them at home with low obligation rates for purchasers and associations. That is a split the difference. That is a good split the difference. Subsequently, I don't think, the examination about charges is going to work out, concerning 100% in all cases. That isn't the thing we're alluding to here. I think President Trump is particularly positive for advancement. And he will never really ruin advancement, in like that. He really wants the dollar down. He feels that will make us more forceful. My manner of thinking will happen is that, returns on put capital in the U.S. near with those elsewhere in the world, they will augmentation. And that will attract more capital, which will truly help the dollar. By and by, to the extent that supporting expenses, the dollar going up is threatening to inflationary. Like the proficiency improvement related with a burst in real life achieved by lower charge rates and various inspirations for successful cash the executives. Along these lines, accepting extension will flabbergast on the low side of presumptions. That will be phenomenal for progression-driven procedures. What happened during the latest 4 years truly is the blast of extension achieved by various things. Nonetheless, COVID, store organization, cash improvement exploding. Regardless of the way that the Fed has fixed all of that, I think a lot of monetary patrons experienced issues tolerating that it would stay dealt with. How extension will stay dealt with is proficiency improvement, and we're at this point seeing strong productivity advancement by virtue of mechanized thinking, and other new advances, as well as actually the dollar firming. Most item costs are assessed in dollars. Most products are assessed in dollars, I should say, and the dollar going up suggests plumbing stress on thing costs. That is a by and large brilliant thing as well. In any case, what will wind up captivating rates here? As of now, this is fairly novel comparable to the 80s. Credit charges were so high close to the beginning of the 80s, 15%, that in actuality, if, the Reagan Association got anything. Consequently, we truly acknowledge there will be a sliding pressure on credit costs. Maybe more than, various monetary patrons anticipate that in the nearby should term, since I figure a lot of development will be held somewhere around, a yearning to understand how methodologies will change from here on out. In case we acknowledge charge rates will dive, we're apparently going to hold on, accepting at least for now that we're associations and purchasers. This is praiseworthy. It even happened during the Reagan Association when he worked in tax reductions over 3 years. A considerable number of individuals just hung on until the obligation rates were, at the point he had insured. So we doubtlessly will see some holding down of development in the next year, completely expecting even lower charge rates. Along these lines, I think credit charges will be uneven to the downside starting there. I accept we will see, an impact and effectiveness improvement. That is what they get together, among the huge headway stages around which we've centered our assessment. Along these lines, high-level mechanics, energy limit, man-made mental ability of blockchain advancement, and multiomic sequencing in the clinical benefit space. Those stages are meeting, and we acknowledge will open unsteady effectiveness improvement, sensitive total national output advancement, and much lower than expected development since these stages are deflationary. They're precisely engaged, and that is incredible leveling. As costs fall, units explode, and it's really huge. The clarification we offer our assessment is it's huge for monetary sponsor and individuals and associations to get on the right 50% of progress, because these are notable headways. In this manner, to the extent that, government procedures, perhaps the main thing that will happen in the uncommonly near term is, a hierarchical rebuilding at a piece of the managerial associations, the SEC and the FTC. The SEC's aggressive statement to, the electronic assets advancement, we've lost a lot of capacity to various countries, considering Chief Chancellor, and I accept that will change. We know it's going to change. We realize it will change. There is a lot of capacity and potential that has been leaving the U.S. to go to various countries, especially those that are more welcoming to cutting-edge assets. I feel that shift will switch. The authoritative environment, especially around the SEC and FTC, ought to change in accordance with developed advancement around here. The development space, particularly in cutting-edge assets, needs clearness, and we expect that as the managerial scene shifts, greater improvement will occur here in the U.S. This will give associations and monetary sponsor a better environment than create, upgrade, and battle internationally. Thus, to sum up, we're at a fundamental intersection of all time. With the techniques that could rise out of this association, we could see similar outcomes to the Reagan years. Greater turn of events, greater headway, and perhaps a strategy for dealing with our continuous monetary troubles. The clarity we as of now have will likely clear a path for a notable time frame driven by mechanical movements in reenacted knowledge, blockchain, energy limit, and clinical care. That's what I trust, expecting we embrace these changes. We could eyewitness a surprising season of advancement that could reshape adventures and open new hypothesis astonishing entryways. What the future holds looks incredibly uplifting, and we are arranged to benefit from these new developments. Thankful to you for your time today, and I expect to see how these movements spread out.